Many people know him as a doctor, but did you know he's an author? Hello and welcome to 18 WJTS Inform. I'm your host, Bill Potter. Joining us in the studio is Dr. Richard Moss. Well known in the community. You have actually run for Congress, but you're probably most known as a doctor, a surgeon, but you're also an author. But tell us a little bit about who Dr. Richard Moss is.
Okay, well, you know, I am married. I have 4 kids, and maybe my kids are more famous than I am. Ariel, Noah, Dina, and Isaiah, and so they're pretty well known. But I came to Jasper in 1991. I set up my practice as an ENT doctor, head and neck surgeon, and so we've been here since '91. You know, we've done other things as well. We started the Bronx Bagel, as I mentioned, which is now Azura. They bought it from us, and we appreciate that, keeping it alive. It's a great place. I had a yoga TV show here with your studio here with Paul Knies in those days, in the 90s. And I've been writing regular columns as well with the Herald, although I no longer do. But you know, some people may have seen that through the years. And then my practice, you know, here, and I've written, you know, a couple of books, as you know, and okay, then I had a political career as well. I ran for 0 for 3, so we're done, just to let everyone know. Some of you may be happy to hear that, some of you may not be. But anyway, we ran in 3 separate races. I've been doing nothing but running for office for the last 7 years. I'm very relieved not to be running for office, just to say. But I ran for state rep against my good friend Mike Braun, who's now our U.S. U.S. Senator. I ran against, and then that was 2014, then 2016, 2018 for Congress against our sitting incumbent Congressman Larry Bouchon. Came up short all 3 times, so by the way, I am done with politics.
But you have moved into, although you're still a doctor, you're still practicing as a surgeon.
Right.
We want to make sure folks know that. But you now are an author. Well, you have been an author for some time, but you have now come out with a new book called A Surgeons Odyssey. Why did you write that book? Why did you write this book?
Well, this is the story of my days actually before I came to Jasper in the late 80s, early 90s. And when I finished all my training, and I was fully board certified, a complete total package, if you will, ready to start practice, I had this dilemma. You know, should I start earning money? And let me just mention, some people may know, and I guess it would make sense since I started the Bronx Bagel. I come from the Bronx, and I was one of 5 boys raised by my mother, who was a single mom before the era of single moms, and that my father died when we were very young. She raised us, but we never had a lot of money, to say the least. So for me, it was a dilemma, but I always had this abiding desire to travel and to use my skills overseas in developing countries. And so that became my life for 3 years. If I didn't run out of money, I would have done it forever. I really loved doing that. I was totally at one with myself. I was doing exactly what I wanted to be doing. But the reality of a lack of income, eventually I ran out of money and I had to return to the States to earn income. But so anyway, that experience of working in developing countries in Asia with all of the different religions and the different cultures is a very interesting story. I mean, in many ways, the medical aspect, the advanced disease that I encountered, the lack of resources, the neglect, and again, the interaction with the local doctors, the cultures that are different, the different religions, I would say it was a story worth telling.
Well, this book then is about that, your younger years, and what you learned when you were there. What are lessons that you took away from there that we'll find in this book?
Well, you know, you take a chance with your life sometimes. You know, so we had, again, this dilemma, you know, earning a standard sort of decision to start a practice and earn income and, you know, buy your house and have a family and so forth, versus this sort of thing, which is really a journey. And the outcome is unknown. I don't know what we're going to experience. And will it be a success? Will it be a disaster? Who knows? but something totally different. So you take a chance with your life, and you undertake a journey in which you're entering, as if I can say, the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell's great book, where you cross the threshold into the realm of danger. Obviously, this is totally unknown. And let me just say the 4 countries that I worked in, so everyone knows, were Thailand, Nepal, India, and Bangladesh. Some of them amongst the poorest countries in the world, especially at that time. They've come up a bit, like India. And again, the different religions. I'm Jewish, and we were traveling in different in countries with different religions: Hinduism, Buddhism, and Islam, which was certainly a very interesting part of the story. And so you have that whole interaction. So there are many lessons, but I would say it's okay, especially at the right stage in your life, to take a chance in your life, to gamble with your life, and do something that you don't want to do. You only have one life. So go ahead and roll the dice and see what happens.
Well, that made me leap. What do you hope folks get from reading this book? When they close the book, then they get done. They go, this is what I take away from this book.
Well, there are many lessons, but you have spiritual lessons again of leading the life that you would like to lead, and again gambling with your life. You also, at an appropriate time to do that. It's not like everyone should be doing that, if you're in your 50s or your 60s. And so, there are different stages in life for this sort of a thing. Mm-hmm. But it's a journey, it's an odyssey through, the developing world, poor countries, and that whole interaction and experience is something that I think they will take. But other themes and messages might be just the nature of poverty. Why are there just a handful of successful countries? And most countries, poverty is the norm. Mm-hmm. The question is, what makes those countries that are successful? And and America was certainly, it still is, but to me it's diminishing quite a bit, for different reasons that are more sort of a political discussion. But put that aside. Certainly America, Western Europe, and other countries are great examples. The other thing is I traveled in the raw, if you will, bare bones and naked. I was not under the auspices of any sort of a group, of the UN or the WHO or any sort of an NGO type of structure under the U.S. government or anything of that nature. I wasn't with a corporation. I was living the life totally as the natives lived, which is the only way I would have it. And by the way, it's the only way I could afford. I had no money, so you got to remember that. So we're traveling really poor, and it's amazing how we lived. But the point is that it also gave me a bird's eye view of the culture as it is. So that way of traveling, I think, is definitely an exciting part of the book. And then the other themes that we discussed as well, the nature of poverty, gambling with your life, the different healthcare systems. Some countries are, relatively successful, even though they're still, I guess they would still qualify as developing nations. Some of them were quite advanced. How did they manage to start lifting themselves up as well? And then, just the individual vignettes and stories, the weird characters that I met. I met my wife out there. That's a story in of itself that I think is, you got to read that part. So that's an exciting development, because I was a confirmed bachelor, and I did not have any plans to get married. I was, on a solo journey, but things happened, and so we met, and she's a nurse, by the way, and we got married overseas. I lived as a Buddhist monk for a time. I entered what they call a forest Buddhist temple, which is where you practice intense meditation and try to get into the nature of reality. The teacher there, the Buddhist monk, who was really, to me, as close to an enlightened person as I have ever met, we had incredible conversations. I met a Jewish Buddhist monk named Uttamo, very prominent in the story. And so you meet a wide range of very unusual characters in the course of the telling of this story.
And you would never get that opportunity unless you just said, I'm going to do this
Bare
At the
bones
time
and
you
naked.
did it.
Yeah. Well, that was the time to do it. And the other thing is, that was pre-internet, YouTube, and all this. I was the first one to do, for example, a very important type of flap. It's a chest flap that we use to reconstruct big defects of the neck. Because again, remember, I'm a head and neck cancer surgeon. We're dealing with large tumors. We have to cut them out, but then you have to put it back together again, or else the mouth is wide open, saliva is pouring into the neck. That's obviously not acceptable. So you have to reconstruct that. So I introduced to some of these countries, particularly Bangladesh, a flap that was really revolutionary at the time. But what I'm saying is that in this day and age of YouTube, where you can just look at YouTube to find out a flap or a technique or a new device, you can sort of do it fairly easily now. But so in a way, that might have been the end of that type of thing, that sort of a journey where you're going out and really having such an impact, you individually, because you're teaching them something that they couldn't get any other way. Now, again, with the age of the internet, telemedicine, and YouTubes and all that, YouTube videos, it's become relatively easy.
Well, speaking of the internet, we're going to get to how somebody can get your book, because the internet now seems to be the way that people can buy the book.
True.
How if someone wants the book, how can they get it?
For people that are nearby, by the way, let me just say that we do have this book in my office at the Medical Arts Building here in Jasper, 721 West 13th Street. And you'll see the sign for my name, but it's Suite 208, but it's easy to find. And we have them, and then you can get them directly, and I'll sign it if you want. It's in the various libraries in Du Bois County, Huntingburg, and Jasper, Ferdinand. It's in Pike County. Okay. Lagodi has them. But then, for most people, these days they're buying it online, which means Amazon.com. And let me also mention that my website, where all of this and much, much more, pictures of my journeys and other pictures are available. My website is richardmossmd.com. One word there, richardmossmd.com. So you can get all that information there as well.
This is not your first book. A Surgeon's Odyssey is your second book. Your first book was Matilda's Triumph, about your mother and living in the Bronx. How do the two compare?
Well, in a way, they're both memoirs. The latter one is specific to that journey. But curiously, I did integrate little vignettes, flashbacks of growing up in the Bronx and my family, so people have a little more context and texture. There's a little more texture to the story than just the journey. We do go back and forth a little bit in time. But other than that, though, they are quite different books. But the first book, Matilda's Triumph, is really a Jasper story, because it deals with my mother, who had a stroke here in Jasper when she was visiting me, and that whole experience of trying to help her and find new techniques and medicines to help her. I had a certain guilt aspect to not recognizing her stroke, and maybe didn't respond as I should. So that is part of that story, intertwined with these vignettes of my mother raising her brood as a lioness, protecting her brood there of five cubs, living in the Bronx under fairly daunting, dangerous circumstances, as people know. The stories I'm sure have heard about growing up in the Bronx. It was probably worse then, pre-Giuliani, who cleaned it up a lot in the 90s. But anyway, so it's a pretty good story as well.
And is that book available as well at your office?
Yes.
Or online, Amazon?
Both.
Okay.
At my office and online.
And would you sign that book for them as well?
Absolutely.
Okay. What would you like people to do just to buy your book? But it's more important that you want them to read the book, because they're going to come away with something. It may be that people find out that we all are on a journey, and their journey is kind of like yours, but maybe different. These are fact-based, correct? These are not. Yeah. This is not fiction.
Right. No, memoir.
Okay. That's an exciting thing to be able to have that right here in Jasper. Are you on the bestsellers list yet? Is that your goal? Is your goal to be an author?
Interview. But we are always striving for that. But, it's so competitive. We've had many reviews, just so people realize that this has been independently reviewed by Kirkus, Publisher Weekly, Independent Publishing Review, and a number of other newspapers and sites that are recognized. Very favorable. It won just to let people know, it won the Best Travel Book of the Year 2019. Independent Press Award. So it's a well-received book beyond just my friends who like it, and my brothers and family members and so forth. Obviously, you know, you get a good plug from them. But we have a lot of great reviews on Amazon that people can look at. And again, well-received and very favorable reviews by independent reviewers that are recognized reviewers that people, I'm sure, know the name, Kirkus. If they don't know that one, they'll know Publisher Weekly and others as well. So it's a well-received book.
And that does say a lot, because you know your friends and family will always tell you it's really good. But when people outside of you and your circle tell you that, you know that it is good.
That's right.
What's your next big event that you've got coming? What's your next big book that you're going to work on?
Well, we're doing.
Can we let out a secret? I don't know.
That's okay. We you know, there's. Well, probably I'm working on a book, and hopefully in a few months it'll be done, about my campaigning. And sort of under the theme is, what is the purpose of the Republican Party? I'm somewhat critical of it, even though I'm a Republican. And so we will go into the story of the campaign, the characters that I met, some of them well known to people here, political figures, and just discuss the. You know, and plus I am a columnist, and throughout the campaign I had regular columns, and so we share those within the context of the story. Press releases, columns responding to certain events that are going on in terms of the news, and just general direction for the country that I would recommend. So that'll be the next book.
Now, we're all driven by different things. You're a doctor, you're driven to be a doctor by certain reasons, but you're an author. What drives you to write these books?
You know, I sometimes feel that I probably should have been a writer as my primary thing. You know, I always, you know, I have a great love of medicine. It's allowed me, to earn a good living, and to, do good work and feel a certain pride in that. And obviously, it allowed me to travel overseas and do what I did. And by the way, I do want to take on there'll be a Surgeons Odyssey Part 2 as soon as I retire, and I'll get back overseas. But really, the writing, I always feel like I'm fitting it in around being a doctor, which, and plus being a family man, which, as you would know, would be very time-consuming. And I would love to have a time in my life where I'm actually a full-time writer. So I'm motivated to express myself creatively. And I just think writing is something that in some ways is perhaps more natural to me than medicine.
Well, is there anything that you'd like to add? Just look for the book, right?
No, okay. No, well, listen, we appreciate it. And anyone, again, it is available in my office. The libraries have it. You can just check it out as well. But if you want to get it from my office, you can. We'll sign it, give you maybe a discount. And it's available Amazon.com. You can just look up my name and you'll see it there. And then my website, if I can maybe mention that, richardmossmd.com. But otherwise, I would say everyone can be something of a hero in their own life. And go ahead and embark on your own hero's journey, your own odyssey.
All right. Well, Doctor, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Pleasure talking with you. A Surgeon's Odyssey in bookstores now, I guess we should say. On the shelves now. So go to Amazon.com or richardmossmd.com. That is his website, or stop by and visit his office. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching 18 WJTS Inform. We're local people watching local people.